Բարև ձեզ հարգելի բարեկամներ, Սփյուռքի ձայնը հեռուստահանդեսը դարձյալ ձեզ հետ է։ Այսօրվա մեր հաղորդումը ուզում եմ սկսել ձեզ ներկայացնելով Հայաստանի Հանրապետության արտաքին գործոց նախարար Էդուարդ Նալբանդյանի ելույթը, որը հնչել է Միացյալ Ազգերի կազմակերպության 68-րդ գագաթնաժողովի ժամանակ։ Նյու Յորքում Միացյալ Ազգերի կազմակերպության 68-րդ գլխավոր վեհաժողովին Հայաստանի Հանրապետության արտաքին գործոց նախարար Էդուարդ Նալբանդյանի ելույթի հարցերը հիմնականում վերաբերվում էին հակամարտություններին, սիրիական ճգնաժամին, Հայոց ցեղասպանության ընդունմանը, 100-ամյակի շեմին, Ղարաբաղյան հարցին։ Նա իր ելույթը սկսեց սկզբում ողջունելով ֆրանսերենով եւ հետո շարունակեց.
Mr. President, despite the fact that most of us share the understanding that elimination of violence and terror is essential for building peaceful, sustainable, and prosperous societies, peace seems to remain an elusive phenomenon in many parts of the world. Armenia remains alarmed by the worsening of the humanitarian situation in Syria. The number of refugees Armenia continues to receive already exceeds 10,000, but tens of thousands of Syrian Armenians still remain in that country that has become their second home after the genocide of 1915. And they are struggling for their survival in unbearable conditions together with their Syrian countrymen. Armenia welcomes the resolution of the Security Council 2118 adopted unanimously yesterday based on the agreement reached in Geneva between Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov and US Secretary of State Kerry, which could lead to the elimination of chemical weapons and exclusion of their use in Syria, and could pave the way to political solution of the Syrian crisis, putting an end to the sufferings of the Syrian people. Mr. President, 3 months ago, on June 18th, the presidents of the three co-chair countries of the OSCE Minsk Group, Russia, United States, and France, made a new statement on Nagorno-Karabakh in the framework of G8 summit in Enniskillen. In Armenia, we welcome this statement, saying that as the co-chairs, we continue to believe that the elements outlined in the statements of the heads of the co-chair countries over the last 5 years can be the basis for reaching a fair and lasting settlement of the conflict. Unfortunately, until now, the Azerbaijani leadership is doing just the opposite, and is increasing warmongering and anti-Armenian hate speech on a daily basis, using even the highest podium of the United Nations. In reality, Azerbaijan is continuously rejecting all proposals of the international mandated OSCE Minsk Group co-chair countries. But Baku rejected all versions of the basic principles of the settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict proposed by the co-chairs of the Minsk Group, including those presented at the Kazan, Sochi, Astrakhan, and St. Petersburg summits. Baku refused not only the basic principles, but also confidence-building measures proposed by the co-chairs on consolidation of a ceasefire, withdrawal of the snipers from the line of contact, and the establishment of a mechanism of investigation of the ceasefire violations. Azerbaijan not only obstructs confidence-building measures, but also periodically organizes provocations on the line of contact with Nagorno-Karabakh and on the border with Armenia, which result in new casualties.
Հայ-ադրբեջանական հակամարտության անդրադառնալով նախարար Նալբանդյանը խոսեց Բաքվի ռազմատենչ հայտարարությունների մասին, մարդասպան Սաֆարովին հերոսացնելու մասին, ինչպես նաև հիշեցրեց, որ Բաքվի փողոցներում հրոճարակ դարձրին Աքրամ Այլիսլիի գրքերը միայն նրա համար, որ նա խոսեց Սումգայիթի ջարդերի մասին.
During the previous session of the General Assembly, I spoke about the release and glorification of an ex-murderer Safarov by the Azerbaijani leadership, which was strongly condemned by the entire international community, by the United Nations and other international organizations, human rights commissions. Even today, more than a year after, Azerbaijani leadership continues to declare that what they did is just very good and dares to criticize the stance of the international community. This clearly demonstrates the deepening gap of perceptions between the Azerbaijani leadership and the international community about what is good and what is bad. Most recently, Azerbaijani authorities on national level have ostracized the eminent Azerbaijani writer Aylis Lee, who publishing a novel where he talks about the pogroms against Armenians in Baku, Sumgait, and other parts of Azerbaijan. His books were publicly burned, and the writer had to leave the country facing threats to his life. Just last week, the Azerbaijani leadership once again came up with new threats against Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh and claimed Armenian territories, including almost 3,000 years old capital city, Yerevan. Regardless of Azerbaijan's destructive stance, Armenia will continue its efforts towards the settlement of the Nagorno-Karabakh conflict exclusively through peaceful means and on the basis of the purposes, norms reflected in the UN Charter and the provisions of L'Aquila, Muskoka, Deauville, Los Cabos, and any Skillen statements of the three co-chair countries' presidents. Mr. President, this March, the Human Rights Council adopted by consensus a resolution on prevention of genocide, initiated by Armenia and co-sponsored by over 60 countries. The recognition, condemnation, and prevention of genocide remains a priority for Armenia, and we will take necessary actions to prevent new occurrences of the crime of genocide, while keeping high on the agenda the issue of responsibility for the crimes against humanity and its denial. As a nation that has survived the first genocide of the 20th century, Armenia unequivocally welcomes the clear position adopted by the UN member states in precluding any possibility of immunity or pardon for perpetrators of crimes against humanity. Mr. President, since May of this year, Armenia has assumed the chairmanship of the Council of Europe Committee of Ministers, a regional organization that remains a key partner of the United Nations in our shared global quest, united behind the principles of fundamental freedoms, defense and promotion of human rights, and continuous efforts for peace and security. The cooperation between these two organizations is also well established in the fields of the fight against racism, xenophobia, hate speech, and intolerance. These issues are also among Armenia's chairmanship priorities that were defined in response to the challenges that member states of both the United Nations and the Council of Europe are facing today. Mr. President, Armenia has committed itself to the strengthening of the institutional capacities of the United Nations. We support the United Nations reform process and ready to bring our feasible contribution to it. We believe that the reforms provide an opportunity to enhance the role of this organization in addressing the crucial issues facing the world. Thank you.
I thank the Minister for
Միացյալ ազգերի կազմակերպության գլխավոր գագաթնաժողովից հետո Հայաստանի Հանրապետության արտաքին գործոստ նախարար Նալբանդյանը մեկնեց Երևան։